Hello everybody, welcome to this week's webinar, How to Create Engaging PowerPoint Presentations with Deb Ashby. Deb's an IT trainer specialising in Microsoft Office training and content creation. She's been an IT trainer for 9 years, and she's been supporting Microsoft products for 21. She's also a Microsoft Office specialist and a certified trainer. I'm very much excited for the webinar, and I shall pass you along to Deb now.
A very warm welcome from me to this afternoon's webinar on creating engaging PowerPoint presentations. So for those of you that haven't attended one of my webinars before, I'll just do some very brief introductions, although James did give me an absolutely wonderful introduction, far better than I could give myself, but I'll give another one. As you said, my name's Deborah Ashby and I'm the IT trainer. And what I basically do is I create Microsoft training courses, online training courses, and run webinars such as this one for you lovely people. And today we are going to be focusing on PowerPoint. So PowerPoint is one of those tools in the Microsoft Office suite that we all have to use from time to time, and the amount that you use PowerPoint really kind of depends on what your job role is. But for someone like me, I constantly use PowerPoint. I'm a trainer, I'm in classrooms, I've got PowerPoint presentations up all the time, and it's really helpful to know how to make your PowerPoint presentations really engaging for your audience, whether that's an audience that you're presenting to, or even if it's just a PowerPoint presentation that you've created and you're going to send or email on to somebody else. You want to make sure that PowerPoint presentation is engaging and grabs their attention. I'm sure we've all been in that situation where we've been gathered in a meeting room, someone started their PowerPoint presentation, and it is literally death by PowerPoint after about 3 slides. Can be a little bit boring, but what we're going to do today is hopefully teach you some rules and show you some ways that you can make your presentations really engaging and keep those people interested. All right, so the way that we're going to structure this is I am basically going to start out just by giving you 10 do's and don'ts when it comes to creating PowerPoint presentations. And then what we're actually going to do is we're going to spend the rest of our time today, and we have got about an hour, just creating a PowerPoint presentation from scratch. And I'll hopefully show you some tips and some tricks and some new things which you may not have used before when it comes to making better PowerPoint presentations. So hopefully you'll pick up a few things. If you want to write notes, please feel free. I'm going to move through at a reasonably rapid pace, but do remember that this is being recorded, so if you miss something or you need to go back and review, then we will make that recording available to you as well. All right, let's crack on. So let's move on to rule number 1, or do's and don'ts. This is not really rules, but the first thing I would say is when you're creating a PowerPoint presentation is to avoid what we like to call a wall of words. And if I just give you a very brief example, something like that. So I think we have a tendency to try and cram as much as we possibly can onto a PowerPoint slide. And I've certainly been in presentations where I sit there, look up at the screen, it's just a wall of words, shall we say. It's a little bit overwhelming and nobody really reads what you got on the screen if there's so much text on there. Remember that your PowerPoint presentations aren't there to explain everything. They're just there as little reminders for you as a speaker or the presenter. So it should be there to assist you, and it shouldn't lay out all of the text. Okay, these kinds of presentations can also be very boring as well if you have too much going on your PowerPoint presentation. So you'll see in a moment when we start to look at the slides, you want to keep your points concise and to a very few words, and not just have loads and loads of paragraph of small text on there, because it's very boring for your audience. So that would be the first in my list. Avoid a wall of words. The second one, now this might be a little bit unusual to you, and that is do not use bullet points. And people are going to think, well, hang on a second, isn't that why we have PowerPoint? If they didn't want us to use bullet points, why do we have a bullet point icon in PowerPoint? Well, that is a very good question. Let me show you. So this would be something which you might see fairly frequently, a list on a slide which has bullet points. Now, there isn't essentially anything wrong with this, but we're tending to move away from bullet points these days. If you ever watch anything like, I don't know if any of you are into things like TED Talks, or if you watch a lot of videos online, if you watch maybe a video from Apple or a video from Microsoft, like if you ever see Bill Gates present anything, They will never have bullet pointed lists on their slides. They don't use bullet points. It just comes across as a little bit amateurish. You kind of want to move away from bullet points and focus more on visual representation, so pictures and no bullets. So something which may look more like that. And I've got, you'll see very soon, I have an Olympic Games theme running through my slides today as we're in the middle of Rio 2016. So you can see that's immediately a lot more interesting than the slide that I had on there before. I'm using a picture. So you're going to remember a picture more than you're going to remember just a wall of words again. And then I've got my bullet points there, but they're not essentially bullet points. They're just lines of text. And it just looks a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer. So don't use bullet points, or move away from bullet points wherever you can. The next point, no more than 6 words. And again, this relates to those lines of text, those bullet points. I'm going to call them bullet points even though they're not essentially bullet points, so that you know what I mean. But you want to try and keep your points brief. You don't want long paragraphs of text because, again, nobody's going to sit there and read them. You shouldn't be standing there when you're presenting reading your script essentially off the slide. You should know what you're going to say, and those bullet points should just be highlighting the key points, and you then elaborate on those key points. So no more than 6 words, or the rule of 6 as it's called, with each of your slides. The next one, pick large fonts. This is one of my personal pet peeves, is when I am sitting in a PowerPoint presentation, again, loads and loads of words and the font's a bit too small, and I haven't got the best eyes at the best of times, so I like when people have large fonts, and there is a standard for fonts when it comes to presentations. You shouldn't really be using anything below 28 points, which is going to seem really large to you, but I think if we go back, this is actually 28 points, so that's still a little bit small. I would probably tend to go maybe slightly bigger than that to 32. So 28 should really be sort of the smallest that you go. If you find you can't fit what you want to say onto the slide, then you probably have too much that you're trying to put on that slide. Okay, so again, just bear that in mind. Keep the points less. Less is more, and use a larger font as well. So let's go back forwards. My favorite, avoid excessive animation. Again, I'm sure this is something, if you've sat in on many PowerPoint presentations in your lifetime, that you've seen that person who's just got a little bit overexcited with their animation. And this always tends to happen. I remember I used to train PowerPoint a lot at somewhere that I used to work, and as soon as you used to show them animation, people used to get so excited, and then they'd come back to me like a week later and they'd show me the presentation they'd done, and it would just be crazy with all this animation, text flying in, pictures appearing from everywhere, and it was just too much. And it just, I understand people kind of go a bit crazy with animation when they first learn it, but animation again should be there to be subtle, and it should enhance and it shouldn't distract. So you don't want to have animation on every single slide in your presentation. You want it there where it's needed. It should enhance. And again, in the presentation we're going to be creating in a moment, you'll see how we use that to its best effect. And I've just got a kind of a little bit of an example of various different points come in. So, you know, you've used a different piece of animation on the pictures and various different ways that that text is coming in. Nothing is standard, nothing is uniform. I've seen presentations a lot crazier than that one I've just showed you as well, but hopefully you get my point in that. So again, less is more when it comes to that animation. Point 6, or rule 6, would be use visuals instead of text. It's statistically proven that people remember images more than they remember text. And that is definitely true for me. I'm a very visual person, and I can still remember slides from presentations that I probably saw 10 years ago because it was such an interesting presentation, and I remember the story that the trainer was telling behind it. So that's kind of a good way of doing things, is using visuals instead of text. And this is again just another example of something which might work. Seems a little bit morbid, I know, but you know, it catches your eye. You're going to remember that. So maybe I'm talking about bad PowerPoint presentations, that we suffer from death by PowerPoint. Now that's a visually striking image. That's something you're going to remember, as opposed to if I just had that written in a bullet pointed text on the screen. So think about the images that you're using. A mistake that people make again with images is they use images that are too small. You can see here I've got a very large image and it takes up the entire slide. What I hate seeing is like a tiny little image that's kind of been shoved in the corner and it's not really doing anything to help enhance the message of that slide. You'll find that the bigger the image is, the more impact it's going to have. So I personally like to kind of have slides like this where you have those larger images. And don't be afraid to be abstract when you're working with images as well. And obviously it has to depend if you're working in a particular business. Obviously you have to be appropriate for that particular line of work. But you know, if you do have a little bit of free rein, then don't be afraid to go a little bit abstract with your images as well, as we've done in this example. Things like humor, quotes, cultural references, all of those types of things work really well in PowerPoint presentations. And my biggest rule, do not use clip art or any kind of cartoon images. That never ever gives a good impression, particularly if it's a business presentation. You know, if you're doing a presentation to, I don't know, school children, then maybe yes, but if anything else, just try and stay away from PowerPoint and try and use photos whenever you can. And also a word about using images. You know, if you're looking for images to use, remember that you can't just go onto Google and take any image that you like. You have to be aware of what the copyright is on that image, or sign up for something like Shutterstock, where then you have a whole host of images or really good quality images that you can use. That's always a good idea if you do spend a lot of time creating PowerPoint presentations. Use high contrast colors. Again, this is another thing that I hate, is sometimes you see people will have a slide and then the background, you can't really read the text on the background, or the text makes your eyes go a little bit funny because it's not a great contrast with the background. So you can see there I've got a blue background, white text, very easy to see, very clean. Something which wouldn't look great would be the top option there, so that would be bad contrast. If you had a slide which had points on it in that grey colour, you're not really going to be able to see them too well, or people are going to strain to see them with that navy background. So again, just be aware of the colours that you're using and make sure that you've got some good contrast going on there. Point 8, looping introduction. Now this may or may not be something which you've used before, and I actually really love this idea. And I used to use it a lot when I did a lot of classroom training, and I also used to use it for webinars as well. What you can do, and what is nice to do, again, if you're doing a presentation maybe to people and you're waiting for them to arrive, hopefully you've got there nice and early before your delegates or your audience start to arrive. Instead of just having a blank screen up, or maybe just the title slide, which maybe says the name of whatever it is you're speaking about, have looping slides or slides that rotate. So we call it a kiosk. The terminology is kiosk in PowerPoint. So kind of example of that would be, and I'm going to show you an example of it in a moment, is I like to have maybe 3 or 4 slides which every 5 seconds they change, and those slides will have on them a mixture of things. So I might have a really nice motivational quote on one slide, and it will then switch to the next slide, which might contain something like a little bit of information about the session, like what time the session's going to start, what time it's going to end. It might then go to another slide after 5 seconds that has a little bit of information about me, so maybe my name, my position, that kind of thing. So there's lots of different things that you can do, and that's called a looping introduction. It just means it keeps your audience engaged before that presentation starts. They're not just sitting there staring at a title slide on a screen. They've got something to look at, something that can be useful, something that can be helpful as well. So that's worth having a little look into. Also very easy to create in PowerPoint. And the final 2 points, which I don't have individual slides for, I've just kind of put them in this big long list. The last 2 at the end, so be aware of your audience. So that's most important as well. So when you are designing your PowerPoint presentations, try and always bear in mind who you're presenting to. So what are they there for, and what do you need them to go away with? What are those key messages that they need to get out of your presentation? And just bear that in mind and try and design your presentation so it's engaging and they go away with the message that you've intended. And the final point, keep it short and sweet. Again, we've all been at presentations which are about 70 slides long. You want to try and get your point across in as few slides as possible, but as under 20 we would always recommend. And just try and make those as engaging as you possibly can and get all of your points across. So those would be my top 10 do's and don'ts when it comes to creating more engaging PowerPoint presentations. So hopefully you will find those useful. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually go in and we're going to start to create an engaging PowerPoint presentation. As I said, we've got a bit of an Olympic theme going on today. So we're going to come out. And what I'm going to do first is show you the end product that we're aiming for. So you can see what the presentation looks like, and we're then going to go in and we're going to recreate it. So let me just minimize that down and jump to this one. So let's put it into full screen mode. So we'll go through the slides very briefly so you get an idea of what we're going to be recreating. So we've got a very nice opening slide there. It's clear, it's to the point, it's not too fussy. I'm going to move on to my second point. So again, we have that large picture there. We don't have a great deal of text on the screen. The text is also in a certain font which kind of goes with the image behind. We've got that old kind of Athenian look about things. We then have a little bit of text on this screen as I'm explaining about the father of the modern day Olympic Games. I'm not even going to attempt to say his name. And then we have just some other things. So you can see here I've got some pictures, we've got some cropping going on there, which I'm going to show you how to do all of these different things. And then we have a little bit about the symbolism or symbols in the Olympic Games, so the Olympic rings, and I have some very basic animation going on there, and hopefully you can see how that animation is being used to effect, and we have what we call some dimming going on there as well. So as I'm going through those points, the previous points are dimming out, and that's a really nice effect. It enables people just to zero in on that particular point. So I'm going to show you how you do that as well. We're then going to see how we incorporate things like charts into our presentation. So this is the medal tally of all time, 1896 to 2012. And those are the top countries in there. So you can see that Great Britain is fourth. Yay, us. Hopefully we'll start to move up those rankings in a few years. I don't know if we'll ever beat the Americans though, but probably not. But we'll take a look at how you add in a chart and also other elements like tables and things like that. And then finally I've just got this slide here. This is not particularly the greatest slide in the world, but it's just there to show you I'm going to show you some things that you can do with shapes and how you merge shapes and various different things and use the Eyedropper tool. All of these are new features in PowerPoint, so 2013, 2016 new features. So if you do use those versions, hopefully you're going to pick up a few little things which you're going to find really, really helpful. And that is it. I do have a couple of other slides, but I'm going to come back to those right at the end. In fact, no, I'm going to do those now. Let me just go to the beginning here. You'll see that I do have these 3 slides at the start here, and this is what makes up my looping slides. Remember I told you you can have, whilst you're waiting for people to come in or waiting for all of your audience to arrive, you want those slides looping round. You can see here, these are the 3 that I would have maybe looping round in a circle. They're more interesting than just having a standard static slide up there. So again, you can use humor, you can make it a little bit more interesting. So just a welcome, this presentation will begin shortly. Grab a drink, sit back, relax, and then we've got our lovely little, is that a lion or a tiger? I'm not sure, I think it's a lion possibly. A lion, okay, there we go. And then on the next slide, I just have a motivational quote from Richard Branson. You want to try and make it kind of relevant to what you're going to be teaching people. Which is always quite nice. People like quotes, so it's quite nice to have something like that on there. And then my third slide is just giving them a little bit of information about that session. So the session's going to last 1 hour. Please switch off your mobile phone. And what I'll do is I'll have those on a continuous loop going round and round. And I'll show you how you do that in a moment also. Okay, so that is what they would see when they came in before the session actually started. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go through and we're going to recreate this PowerPoint presentation. We've got about 40 minutes, so we should be able to get it done in that time. And you'll see it's actually really, really super quick and really, really easy once you know what you're doing. Okay. All right, let's start from scratch. So I have this printed off so I know where I'm at. Okay, so let's start with a blank PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to go up to our file ribbon. So remember, the file takes you into that backstage area, which is where you have all your presentation administration options, shall we say. So new, open, save, save as, print, all of that fancy stuff. So we're going to go to new because we're going to create a new presentation, and straight away it's going to take you in to select a template from the list there, or blank presentation. Now it really depends on what you're doing. Some people like to use the templates, other people like to start from scratch. If you work for an organization, a lot of organizations will have their own templates, so you'll have your own company logo on them, various things like that, and you should probably see those in there as well if they've been saved as templates. So select whichever one that you want to use. I'm just going to start with a blank presentation. I don't tend to like these other ones too much. I prefer to just kind of start from scratch. All right, so when you first start up or select a template in this blank, you need to select a slide layout. Now you don't necessarily have to have a slide layout. You can choose to have no slide layout whatsoever, but by default you can see I have these placeholders come up. So where it says click to add title and click to add subtitle. So really what PowerPoint is doing is it's assuming that this is a title slide. It's the first one. I can just go in there and I could type a title if I wanted to and a subtitle. So it just makes it nice and easy, and everything is placed where it should be. Now if you don't like that layout, you can switch that layout. So again, up on your home ribbon in the slides group, you have a little layout drop down, and this will give you some options with regards to the layout that you have on each slide. And it's worth having a play around with these. So this one here, for example, title and content, that allows me to add a title. I could then add some bullet points if I wanted to, and it also gives me a quick way of inserting pictures, charts, graphs, so it depends what you want to use that slide for as to which slide layout you use. So these are there to help you. Sometimes they are more of a hindrance than a help, so you do also have just a blank option there as well. So if you just want to start from scratch, have a completely blank slide, then select the blank slide layout. Now for this one, I'm going to use title only, like so. And the first slide we're doing is that front slide, so the one that says History of the Olympics. Now I'm going to add in the picture of the Olympic rings first of all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to my insert ribbon. Remember, your insert ribbon contains everything that you can insert into your presentation. So really, really logical, these ribbons in PowerPoint. And we have our images group, and you can see there's lots of different things in there that I could choose to insert, and I have pictures and I have online pictures. Now online pictures is a new functionality. I think it was new in 2013. Yeah, 2013. And what that will basically allow you to do is go directly to almost like a Bing search, because it's Microsoft, they don't say a Google search, it would be a Bing search for whatever it is that you're looking for, okay? Whereas the pictures one will allow you to pick up a picture that you've already got saved off onto your C drive, okay? Now I'm going to do a mixture of online and pictures. So this one is actually saved, so I'm going to click on pictures. I want to show you this because there's something that's fairly new that's really cool, I think. So let me just find where my images are. Here they are. So I'm going to select my Olympic rings and I'm going to click Insert. Now what you'll see, did you see open up down the side, we now have this design ideas panel that's popped up, and this is new. PowerPoint never used to do this, and I actually think it's really nice. It gives you some designs or ways that you might want to display that picture, and some of them are actually really, really nice and really, really effective. You don't have to select one of these. If you don't like it, just close the panel down and carry on doing whatever it is that you were doing. You can resize, you can place the picture wherever you like. However, I quite like this one, and this is the one that we use, so I'm going to click on this slide design to add that, and I think that looks really, really nice. I'm then going to go in and just give my slide a title, so this one is called History, oops, it would help if I could spell, of the Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Olympic Games. There we go. And as easy as that, I've got a really, really nice, engaging looking presentation. It looks like I've gone to a lot more effort than I actually have with that title slide. And I then can build from there. Okay, so let's go in and let's do our second slide. So the second slide had on it a picture of the Acropolis, I think it is. So I'm going to insert a new slide. So again, we're going up to our home ribbon and we have our new slide drop down. Now, this new slide button is one of those buttons that's divided into two parts, and you want to make sure you're clicking on the bottom half in order to get those different options, those different layout options. Now for this one, I am going to select title only again. And I'm going to pick up my picture again, so insert, and I think I have this one stored off also. Yes, there it is. I'm pretty much going to do a similar thing. So again, my design ideas come up there. Hopefully this repetition will allow it to remain in your brain. And I'm going to go down and I'm going to pick this one just here because I think that looks quite nice. I'm then going to go in and I'm going to add my text to this. So I want it to say the first Olympic Games were held in Athens. You can tell I don't normally type on this keyboard. Athens, Greece, in 1896. Okay. Now, that's fine, although I don't quite like how that text currently looks. So I'm going to make some changes to that text. It doesn't really go with the background, so you might want to then go in and change the font style, the size, whatever it is that you want. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to highlight my text, I'm going to go to my home ribbon again, and I'm going to go to my font formatting options. And I'm just going to change that to something that's a little bit more in keeping with the background. So I'm going to go down and we're going to select this one just here. So that looks a lot better than that previous font that we'd used. So again, think about the fonts that you're using as well, what overall impression it is that you're trying to create. Okay, so this might be where I then start to speak about the first Olympic Games. So it's just there as a visual reminder of what I'm about to talk about. I don't have loads of text on the screen explaining the history of the Olympics. Let's go on to the next slide. So the next slide is where we have a little bit of information about Baron Pierre de Coubertin. There we go, I did manage to say it. So we're going to add in a picture, and this is where we're going to start to do some slightly different things with our slides as well. So for this one, I'm going to go to New Slide, and I'm going to go to, I think we're going to go to Content for this one. So what I'm aiming for here, and the reason why I've selected the to Content layout is because I know in my mind, and it's always quite good to have an idea in your mind as to how you want your slides to look before you start to compose your PowerPoint slide deck. Sometimes I will kind of almost storyboard what I'm doing on a piece of paper first of all, just so I have a rough idea. So I know that I want a picture of Baron Pierre on one side, and then I want some text about him on the other side. So this kind of layout is going to suit what it is that I'm trying to do. Okay, so it's always good to think about that before you actually do it. So let's go in and let's add the picture first of all. Now, I don't have the picture stored online. I don't have the picture stored on my C drive. I'm going to need to look him up online. Okay. Now, I don't need to go to the Insert ribbon to insert this. I can do it from this little panel of icons in the middle here. So you can see I have one. As I hover over, I get the little message in text pop up that says Pictures and Online Pictures. So I'm going to click Online Pictures. Sometimes this can take a couple of seconds just for it to load up, but what it's going to allow us to do when it loads is to do a internet search essentially for whatever keywords you're looking for. So as I said, it's Microsoft, so it does default to Bing as opposed to something like Google, and unfortunately before somebody asked that question, because they always do, no, you can't change that to Google, unfortunately. They don't allow you. They're trying to force you to use Bing, basically. So let's type in the name of the person that we're looking for. Baron Pierre de Coubertin. like so, and then I'm going to hit enter, and that's going to do an internet search. So it's a little bit quicker. I don't have to go and fire up an internet page. I can do it all from within PowerPoint. I'm going to select this first picture of him with his very dashing moustache, and we're going to click insert. And again, look what happens. My design ideas panel pops up at the side and offers me alternative ways of using that picture in this particular layout. So I really like this. As I said, it never used to come up, but now that it does, I'm liking it a lot, and I'm finding I'm using it in a lot of presentations. So I'm going to select this bottom one just here because I think that looks quite nice. There we go. And I'm then going to go in and add in my text. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to type his name at the top. Baron Pierre de... Now what I want underneath is I want just a little bit of information about Baron Pierre. Now I could go off, fire up an internet page, go to Wikipedia, copy and paste some text in, that kind of thing, but I don't need to do that. I can use the smart lookup tool within PowerPoint and it will do that for me. It makes things a lot quicker for you. All I need to do is highlight his name. And this could be any search term that you're looking for, right-click my mouse and you'll see that you have a smart lookup option. So if I click that, you're then going to see in a pane down the side, it goes away and it searches the internet. And you'll see the first option there is the Wikipedia page for this guy. So I could click on it. It's going to give me a little bit of information, some of his stuff there, and I might just want a little bit of blurb. So I'm just going to copy and paste directly from there. I'm just going to do the first bit and copy. So it makes things a lot quicker and easier for you. And I'm going to paste, so Control V to paste that in. Now I don't want a bullet point there either, so I'm going to click, make sure I'm clicked at the start, and I'm just going to go up to my home ribbon and just going to untick that bullet point just so it's like that. I'm just going to tidy it up a little bit, put a little bit of a paragraph space in there, like so. Okay. So there we go. In fact, I'm going to make the text a little bit bigger also. There we go. So it looks a little bit better on the page. So a couple of little tricks in there using that smart lookup, things like that that you can use when you're putting together your PowerPoint slides. As I said, just all little things which make your life a lot easier. Lovely. So I told you this was we're going to speed through these slides. The next one. Again, we're going to do something slightly different. We're going to start working with shapes and using some cropping tools and various different things like that. So the next slide that we're going to do is we're going to add a couple of pictures in and we're going to crop them and do some other fun things with them. So for this one, I'm going to go to New Slide and I want to do, just bear with me one second, title and to content again. In fact, I'm going to do this one here, the comparison. Lovely. So again, I'm going to add in a couple of pictures into here. So on the left-hand side, I want a picture of all of the athletes in the first game. So this title of this slide is going to be the first Olympic Games. And we'll just put in brackets there, 1896. Oh my goodness. That's better. All right, so in 1896, I'm going to click to add the text. There were 241 athletes taking part. And I want a picture that's going to represent those 241 athletes. So for this, again, I'm going to go to my online pictures. So I'm going to use my little symbols in the middle and I'm going to select online pictures. Again, as I said, this can take a few seconds to come up. And I'm going to type in here, I'm just going to do a search on Bing for Olympic Games 1896, and let's see what it comes up with. What pictures do we have? Here we go. So I'm going to select this first one. It looks like it would be something that I'd want to put on my slides, some runners. So I'm going to select it and I'm going to do Insert. Now look at this picture. When I've inserted it, obviously it's some kind of photograph or something. We've got this kind of rough edge down the side. It doesn't look great. It looks like someone's taken a picture of a photograph and that's what's online. So I want this to look a little bit nicer, so I'm going to start to use some cropping tools to crop out some of this area. And if you've never heard of that terminology before, I'm sure most of you have, it just means kind of cutting out parts of the picture. Now, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to click on the picture. And remember, when you click on a picture, if you glance your eyes up to the ribbons at the top, we now have this Picture Tools contextual ribbon. Remember, contextual ribbons, and this runs across all of the Microsoft applications, only appear when you need them. So because I'm clicked on a picture, I now have my Picture Tools available, and I've got all my formatting options in there specifically for my picture. If I click off of that, that ribbon disappears because I don't need it anymore. Okay, so let's click on the picture. I'm going to go up to my Picture Tools. I'm looking for the Crop tool, and it's all the way over on the right-hand side in the size group just here. Now I'm going to click the drop down, and I've got two options here. I've got Crop, which will allow me just to crop this rectangle, or I could crop to shape if I wanted to. So I'm going to do that first of all. I'm going to select a shape, and it's going to crop to that shape. So I'm going to do a rounded rectangle just to make things a little bit more interesting. And you can see now I have rounded corners on this picture. It still doesn't look great because we've still got this border around the outside that we don't want, so I'm then going to go in and do an additional crop. So I'm going to click on my picture again. I'm going to go back to crop, and this time I'm just going to select the crop tool at the top. And what you'll see will happen is that I now have these little black guidelines around the outside, or handles I should say, and I can just drag those in to crop out the areas that I don't want. So I'm just going to drag this one in like so, and I want to crop out a bit of that border at the bottom and to the side, and also finally at the top. And then to set that, you can either click on the crop button again, or you can just hit enter on your keyboard, she says. Mine didn't like that. There we go. Okay, so I now have a picture that looks a lot better. I've made it a rounded rectangle, and I've cropped out the unnecessary stuff, shall we say. I'm going to do another picture just here, which I want to look, and I want to position it in line with this. And when you're working with objects on a page and positioning and things like that, some people find it very useful to turn on grid lines in their PowerPoint presentation. It just allows you to kind of line things up a little bit nicer. So I'll just show you where those are. If you go to your View ribbon at the top, you've got a little show group just here where you have grid lines and guides. So if I was to turn grid lines on, I don't know if you can see that, if that's coming up too well on this presentation, but we now have some grid lines in the background, so you can really kind of start to line things up a little bit nicer, makes things a little bit easier. I don't personally like them, but just in case you weren't aware that they were there, those grid lines are there, and I'm going to turn mine off. So let's go in and add what we want on our second side. So we're going to do something similar. So this one is going to display 14 nations. And I'm going to go back to my online pictures, and we're going to do a search for Olympic nations this time. So let's type in Olympic nations and see what Bing gives us. Alright, so I'm going to choose this picture just here. That looks pretty good. We've got some flags in there, which is kind of what I was aiming for, and I'm going to click on Insert. Now, it's inserted, it's in a rectangle. It doesn't quite match the one that we've just done because it's a rectangle, and it's also in color. So I'm going to go in, and I want this to kind of look and like these images should be together. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to make the image a rounded rectangle, and I'm also going to make it sepia so that it's kind of a similar color to the picture that we've also added. So again, click on your picture to get your Picture Tools contextual ribbon. And we're going to go back to our crop, and we're going to do that crop to shape again and select the rounded rectangle at the top. So that'll give us that similar shape. I'm going to turn this picture sepia in a moment. What I want to do first of all is make sure that I've got this lined up completely with this other picture. And there's something else that's been really good that's been added to, again, across all of the Microsoft applications, and that is automatic guidelines. So you'll see as I start to move this picture around, it will show me in context with other objects on the page if it's lined up or not. So if I pick this picture up and start to move it, can you see I get a guideline just there? And I can move this picture around and it will tell me kind of when it's in line. So I can see now that I'm in line with the bottom of the other picture and also the middle just there, like so. I've got my guidelines up there. Okay, so I can move it around like that. So use those when you're trying to line things up. Oops, I accidentally moved that. That wasn't supposed to happen. All right, the final thing I'm going to do to this picture is I'm going to turn it sepia, so that we're going to use some color correction options. So again, I'm going to click on the picture, go up to my picture tools, and this time in this group at the start we have in the adjust group we have various different color corrections. We can sharpen, soften, adjust the brightness or the contrast. There's some artistic effects in there, so you can go really wild if you want to. I'm just going to go to color and I'm going to choose the sepia option, which you can see once I've selected it, it kind of makes that picture look a little bit more in tune with the other picture that we have on there as well. Okay, so quite nice. I'm also going to make these titles a little bit bigger just by adjusting or using the increase font size option just here. We can do the same for this one. And another really good little tool that's new in PowerPoint is the Eyedropper tool. And this is something I've been dying for them to put into PowerPoint for ages. And this isn't exactly the best example to use it on because we don't have a great deal of color in these pictures, but you'll get the idea of how it works. The Eyedropper tool will allow you to essentially select any color from anything that you've got on the screen. So if I want to make sure that my font is exactly the same color as maybe something that I have in a picture, I can use the Eyedropper tool for that. So I'm going to highlight the font just here. I'm going to go up to the font group and click my little font color drop down, and you'll see now you have a drop option called Eyedropper right at the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to select Eyedropper, and then you'll see as I start to hover that page, it's picking up the color that I'm currently hovered over. So that's really good if I want this text to match something exactly, because sometimes it's really hard getting your text to match other elements on your page. I can now do that. So as I said, we don't have a great deal of color on here, but I'll just select one of these various shades of brown, like so, and that will then change that to that shade of brown. Okay. Once you've done it once, then that shade will then be available when you go back to the drop down. You can see in recent colors I now have it listed there, so it makes it very easy to select. You don't have to go in and remember exactly where you picked it up from before. Alternatively, remember that when it comes to copying, formatting or colors or anything across, you have your Format Painter tool just here as well on your home ribbon in that clipboard group. So again, if I want to make sure I'm copying across all of the formatting to this, I can go up here, I can click on Format Painter, or if you want to do a lot of format painting, double click and then just swipe it across and it will change that color or copy that format across. Okay, so just again a couple of little tips and tricks when it comes to working in your slides. All right, so we're happy with that. Let's move on to the next slides where we're going to start to add in some animation. So we're going to go to New Slide again. And this time, let me just check which one we're going to add. Okay, so this time we're going to do picture with caption. So again, what I want on this side is I want to have a picture on the right-hand side, and then I want to add in some text. And what we're going to do is we're going to then animate that text. So I'm going to insert my picture first of all by clicking on the little pictures icon, and I'm going to pick up my Olympic rings again. And again, you'll see we get our design ideas pop up. Now I'm just going to get rid of this Smart Lookup panel, just so that we've got that just there. And again, I can go through and select design idea. Again, if you don't like them, you don't have to select one, but I am going to select this one just here, because I think that looks quite nice. And I'm going to type in a title, and this one's going to be called Olympic Rings. And I'm going to add in some points. So just bear with me while I type these in. I know it's never very interesting watching someone type, but needs must. Hopefully we're all learning something about the Olympics as we go through this presentation. Just a couple more points. And there we go. Now I'm going to stick to my own rules of not using bullet points, so I'm going to remove these bullet points. They do apply automatically in a lot of these layouts. So I'm going to go up and I'm just going to remove those by just unticking those bullets so that I have my 5 points just there. And I'm actually also just going to make this text ever so slightly bigger, like so. Okay. Now what I'm going to do to make this a little bit more interesting is that I'm going to animate these. So before we do that, let's start to take a look at how our presentation is building up. So I like to always, as I'm building it, just check what it's going to look like in slideshow mode. So if you remember to view your presentations in slideshow mode, in the status bar at the bottom you have different views. And I don't know if you can see I'm hovering over. We've got normal, which I'm in now, slide sorter, which is really good if you're trying to rearrange or add transitions onto your slides. We have reading view, and then we have slideshow. And slideshow is the one I want. So I'm going to make sure I'm clicked on the first slide, and I'm just going to click on slideshow. And that will put it into slideshow mode. So this is where you can kind of go through and get an idea of what your presentation looks like when you actually present it to other people. So this all looks very nice so far. Not particularly dynamic or interesting, so I think, yeah, you know what, I want to add in a little bit of animation. And this is what I was saying with regards to animation. Be subtle with it. Only use it where you think it's going to enhance as opposed to detract from the actual content. Now, if I'm in a presentation and I'm talking about the Olympic rings, I don't want to have all 5 points up on the screen straight away because people will just start reading ahead. I want them to come in one at a time, say my little bit, and then the next one will come in. So that's what I'm aiming for with this animation, because that's going to help me. So when you're doing any kind of animation, you want to make sure that you're clicked on the animations ribbon at the top. The first thing I will always do when I come into here is turn on my animation pane, and you'll see it's pretty much the only option that you currently have. Everything else is grayed out, but you do have the animation pane available for you at the top. So let's click on that, and that gives you your animation pane at the side. And I'll just make that a little bit bigger just by dragging it out so you can see it. Now what this will show is as I start to add animation, you'll be able to see it listed in this pane. It just helps when you're trying to organize. You can move things around, you can add other options from this pane as well. So it's a really nice way of just kind of keeping on top of where your animations are at. Now, I'm going to go back to here, and I want these points to come in one at a time. Now, you'll see up the top here we have lots of different ways that text can come in. So if I click this little drop down, you'll see they're divided into groups: entrance, emphasis, and exit. And it depends where you want that animation applied. Do you want it applied as the text is coming in, so the entrance? Do you want it applied once the text is there? Do you want it to do something after it's kind of there? Or do you want it when you're moving out or moving on to the next point, do you want it to animate in a certain way? So do you want it entrance, emphasis, or exit? Most of the time, and I'll say most of the time, you want entrance, okay? And what a lot of people use is the fly-in option, which you've probably seen. It's just a point comes in from the side, either the left or the right, it flies in. I'm not the biggest fan of that because I find that you kind of, people's eyes kind of track it as it goes past. It's like they're at a tennis match, their heads are going backwards and forward. So I prefer the fade in. I just think it's a little bit easier. So I'm going to select the fade in option. We're going to use that. Another thing that I see people do wrong with their PowerPoint presentations is they think, right, I want to animate all of these points. I'm just going to highlight all of them, and then I'm going to go in and apply. Now if I was to do that, if I was to highlight everything and click fade, if I then play my presentation in slideshow mode, they all come in at once because I've only applied that animation to the whole lot in one go. It doesn't apply to the individual parts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to, let's see if it will let me undo. Yes, it does. Lovely. You need to select them individually, which can be a bit of a pain if you've got loads of points, but otherwise it's not too bad. So I'm going to select the first point, click on fade. Okay, and you'll see it now gets a number 1 at the side, and you can see it build up in the animation pane. So I'm going to go through, I'm just going to do the same thing for all of these. You could apply different animations to each different points, but that's when your starts to get a little bit crazy. So try and be a little bit consistent with the animation that you're applying. So each of these points. And then the final point there, like so. Okay, so now if I play my slideshow, hopefully they're going to come in one at a time, which they do. Okay, so they fade in. Now I want to go a step further with that, and I told you that I want people just to really focus on the point that I'm currently talking about. So this is where we can add a nice little effect called dimming, and I'm always surprised that people don't use this more. I've always used it. As soon as someone showed it to me, I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. I'm going to use that in all of my PowerPoint presentations, and I literally do. So I really like this effect, and it's so easy. Once you know where it is, it's really, really easy to do. So for this you need to have your animation pane open. See, I'm going to have to move this over a little bit because my WebEx is getting in the way. But you'll see next to your animation points, if you click, there's a little drop down next to each of your animations. And you then have effect just here. And this is where you'll find the option for dimming. Okay, so by default it's set to not dim. That's why it says don't dim in there. If you want it to dim, click the drop down, and then you can select a color that you want it to dim out to. So you don't just either have dim or don't dim. You can select a color that you want the text to change to. So what I do is I tend to select a color that's fairly close to the background that the text is on, so it kind of blends into the background. So normally like a white or a light gray or something like that. I don't necessarily want it to disappear completely. I want it still visible, but I just don't want it to be particularly highlighted. So I'm going to go for more colors, and I'm just going to do like a palish grey like that. And do OK. Okay, and I can see there a little preview. Now you do have to go through and do each of these individually, so effect options, but if I do these you're never going to forget them, you see. So I'm going to go back in, and there's my colour now, which I need because I used it recently. And I'm going to do that for all of them. And the final two. And the last one. Lovely. All right, so now let's take a look at what our presentation looks like. So my first point fades in, I move on to my next point, and the previous point fades out. So it's actually a really, really nice effect and just allows your audience to focus on that one particular point. It's also quite good for you as well if you're talking, you're not getting confused by what's on the screen, you've just got that point highlighted. So I really like that little effect. So that is dimming. Again, a highly underutilized feature of PowerPoint, shall we say. Okay, the last couple of slides that we're going to do. So the next one is where we're going to add in a chart. So we're going to have a picture, and we're also going to add in some charts information. So this is where we're going to show the medal tally for the top 10 countries from when the Games started in 1896 up until last year's London Olympics in 2012. Not last year, sorry. What am I talking about? 2012. 4 years ago. It seems like last year to those of us who were here. All right, so let's go in and add another slide. So we're going to go back to new slide, and the one that I'm going to use for this is the to content. And again, I'm going to add a picture, and this picture I have saved off on my C drive, so I'm going to click on the little pictures button. And I'm going to add this picture of this guy with some medals on. And again, as we've always had, we get our design ideas pop up, and I'm going to choose this one just here because I quite like the look of that. And I'm going to add my title text, so this is going to be the medal tally, 1896 to 2012. Alright, so now this is where we're going to go in and we're going to add a chart. And again, you can see if you've selected the correct layout, you'll see that you've got a content layout. You'll have all these different options, and so far the only ones that we've really utilised are the pictures and the online pictures. You have other ones in here, so you could insert video if you wanted to. You could insert smart art. Remember, that's for things like organisational charts. You've got one for tables, so if you want to put a table in there, you can do it straight from there. And then this one here, Insert Chart, which is what we're going to use right now. So I'm going to click on Insert Chart, and it's going to take you to all of your different choices for charts that you can insert into your slides. And I'm just going to go for a very basic column chart, which looks like that. But if you wanted to, I mean, what is a box and whisker chart? I mean, who knows? I've never heard of a box and whisker chart before, but if you want to, you can put a box and whisker chart in your slide deck. I'm going to go for a boring old column chart. How's about that? And click on OK. Now what PowerPoint will do is it will open up like a little mini Excel table as well. So it puts in the basic default chart, but this isn't representing any data that we want currently at the moment. It's just got some dummy data in there. So what you need to have handy is some data that you want displayed in that chart. So you might have that in an Excel spreadsheet, you might have it in a Word document, you might just want to free type it in here if you want to, which you can do. I've got, in good old Blue Peter fashion, here's one I made earlier, I have some data in an Excel spreadsheet, and it's called Medal Tally. So I'm just going to open that up. So this is the data that I want displayed in my chart. So I'm basically going to copy and paste it. So I'm going to highlight it, I'm going to right-click copy. I'm going to go back to this little thing here, and I'm going to paste my data in, so Control V. It will tell me that the data I'm pasting isn't the same size as my selection, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. And you'll see as soon as I paste it in, it's now updated in my chart. And there we have, whoops, what did I do just there? There we go. There we have all of our countries in a nice chart. You could then go in and add a chart title, so I could put Medal Tally if I wanted to, and you can start adding in chart options. Because as I'm clicked, you'll see if you look at the ribbons, you now have all your chart tools, so I can start to change the chart type if I wanted to, and you'll see as I hover over some of these that are available, you can really kind of go to town. I quite like that one. And you also have different things that you can add down the side. So if I click that plus, you can see all the elements that I have currently. If I wanted to, I can add axis titles. If I select axis titles, that will allow me to then just to change that to say country or countries. And number of medals down the side, which I'm not going to do because I'm sure you can see what I'm talking about just there. So you can then go in and edit your chart however you need to. So really nice and simple. You can see how in just 40 minutes we've created all these slides which look like you've spent a lot more time doing that. If you'd had it all planned previously, or sorry, planned beforehand, a rough storyboard of what you wanted it to look like, you can very, very quickly go in and create a really nice looking presentation. There is just one more slide I want to show for you, and we're probably going to run, I'd say probably about 5 minutes over, if that's okay with everyone. If you have to hop off at 1/2 exactly, then please feel free. I am almost finished. There's only 5 minutes left. Just one more slide. I'm just going to go in, I'm going to do new slide, and this time I'm just going to do a blank slide. I just want to show you a couple of new options which we have with shapes as well, which I think are quite nice. So I'm going to add a picture into here. Now because I've selected blank slide, I don't have my content options in the middle, so I'm going to have to go to Insert, and I'm going to go to Online Pictures just here. And this slide is going to be all about looking ahead to the Rio Olympics. When I designed this, it was looking ahead. Now we're kind of almost finished the Rio Olympics. So I'm probably not going to be able to call it looking ahead from this moment on, but I'm just going to type in Rio 2016.
And I'm just going to select an image from here. Which one shall we have? Let's just have something like that. In fact, no, there's one I saw earlier which I wanted to use, but I probably can't find it again. No, always the way. Let me just, oh no, there it is. Perfect. So, insert. Okay, so we have a nice big image there. I'm just going to move it over, and as I said, I like my images kind of, I'm probably going to stretch this out of a bit of shape, but I'm just going to have it taking up the whole screen just there. And maybe I want to add maybe something at the top which just says like looking ahead, looking forward, something like that. And in this case, I'm going to do it slightly different. I'm just going to insert a couple of shapes. Now, the option that I want to show you here is a new option called Merge Shapes. Now, previously, in old versions of PowerPoint, you would add a shape in, so you might have a circle, you might have a triangle, but they were very much independent of one another. What you can do now is create other shapes by merging shapes together, and those shapes will act as one, so you can then add text into the new shape that you've created, which can sometimes be really useful. So let me just show you how it works. I'm going to go to the Insert ribbon, and I'm going to go to the Shapes option just here, and I'm going to create or just add a couple of shapes. So I'm going to add a rectangle. I'm just going to draw that like so. And I'm also going to insert a circle. Now, when you're drawing circles, if I was to just click and drag, the circle is going to be very much freehand. You know, I might end up with an oval as opposed to a circle. If you want to make sure that you get an exact circle every single time, once you've selected, and I need to go back and select my circle, as you're drawing it, hold down the Shift key, and that will make sure that your circle is a circle as opposed to a free-formed oval, shall we say. So hold down Shift to get that. And what I might want to do is combine these two shapes. So maybe I want a little shape at the top which looks something like that, a little bit like the tube signs in London. But maybe I don't want these independent of one another. I want them to be one shape. So I can now highlight both shapes, so hold down Shift and select both shapes. And then you'll see on my drawing tools format I have merge shapes. And there's various different ways that I can merge these shapes. And you'll see as I hover over them, it shows you the different ways it's going to merge them. But the one that I like most is the Union option. So that is now one shape I've created, and I can go in and I can add text right into the middle of that shape. It's not acting as two independent shapes. So then I might want to do looking ahead, something like that. Okay, and I'm just going to make that text a little bit bigger again, just by adjusting size. Okay, so just very, very briefly on those shapes as well. That's pretty much all I wanted to show you in this presentation. Hopefully that's given you some tips and tricks and show you how easy it is PowerPoint to create really eye-catching and engaging presentations. And I guess we should really look at it from the beginning just to end. So let's go to slideshow mode and take a look at this lovely presentation which has taken us about 50 minutes now to create. So you can see it's actually really quite interesting as opposed to just some bullet points on a screen or a wall of words or something along those lines. So really do have a little think about the way that you use graphics, text, pictures, everything in your PowerPoint presentations, and just trying to adhere to some of those rules. Okay, lovely. All right, I don't want to run too much over. I could go on for probably another hour or so on this subject, but I hope that's given you a little bit of a taster. So what I'll do is I will sign off now and hand back to James, and thank you so much to everybody who attended today. Oh, some questions. Do we have any questions before we sign off? I always forget the questions.
No, we don't have any questions actually. Thank you.
No?
Thank you.
All right, fabulous. That's fine. That's fine.
Oh, in fact, we have one actually. Sorry,
Oh, okay.
If you can just give me one moment.
No problem.
Can you print the notes section in PowerPoint?
Yes, you can. So the notes section, if you're not sure what that is, again, this is quite useful. So if I was to click on one of my slides, if you look at the bottom in the status bar, there's a little notes option. If I click notes, it kind of opens up a little notes panel at the bottom, which I can expand just by dragging up and down. This enables me to add some notes into my slides. So what I do quite a lot is add kind of what I want to say. So my script, what I want to say about this particular slide. So I would add that in there. We're just going to add in a load of junk text. And then what I would do is I would then print my slides, my notes separately. So if I now go to File and Print, I have various different options. If you're wondering why my presentation is showing in black and white, it's because the printer that I'm connected to currently is a black and white printer. So if I've got a colour connected, it will show as colour, but that's why it's black and white. When you're printing, you want your option just here, Settings. Sorry, not that. That's the one I want, full page slides. You'll see you have an option for notes pages. And what that will do is it will print the slide and any notes that you've got underneath, which is quite useful. I like to kind of print those off with my notes, keep them with me, and I know which notes refer to which particular slide. Thank you for that. Any other questions, or are we good? No, we're good? Wonderful. Okay, then I will sign off and let you get back to your day. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm sure I will speak to you again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deb. That was great. I certainly learned a lot, and I hope that everybody else did. If anybody would like to revisit the webinar, if you could send an email to info@webinarsteam, we will be more than happy to send you a link out so that you can revisit and rewatch. And anything that you found difficult or can learn on first visit, you can do so again. So thank you very much and good evening.